Peeta Mellark is a very interesting character, and I had a lot of fun breaking down his story arc because it's so complicated. He's an extremely kind and down-to-earth guy, and even when the Capitol tries to take that from him, his good-natured personality claws its way back. He fought against so much, and in this video I'm going to break his entire timeline down from the books, not the films. I'm not discussing the films at all. There's a big difference between the book canon and the movie canon, but I will be using the footage just to make it more visually pleasing for you guys. Now, there will be major spoilers for the entire trilogy in this video, so you've been warned. Now, let's get the video started. Peeta Mellark was born in District 12, the poorest district in all of Panem, but he and his family lived in the merchant area of the district, where the more privileged District 12 citizens lived. He grew up with two brothers, Peeta the youngest of the three. His family made their money through the bakery that they owned, and Peeta along with his two brothers spent most of their time off from school working in that bakery. While their father was kind, their mother was not, and she was known to beat Peeta and his brothers if they messed up in the bakery. One of Peeta's main jobs was decorating cakes, and he was incredible at this. On Peeta's first day of school, his father walked him there and pointed out Mrs. Everdeen, Katniss Everdeen's mother. He told his son that he had been in love with her, but that she ran off with a coal miner because he had a beautiful singing voice. On the first day of school, Peeta heard Katniss sing, and he fell for her right then and there. Peeta was a genuinely kind person who won over pretty much anybody that he talked to. One of the best examples of how selfless he is was when one day Peeta watched his mother yell at a starved Katniss after finding her looking for scraps in the bins behind the bakery, and when he saw Katniss walk away then collapse from hunger and exhaustion, Peeta knew he had to do something. He purposefully burnt 2 loaves of bread, something that made his mother hit him in the face. And Peeta, who wore a red mark on his face from where his mother had hit him, tore off a few pieces and fed it to the pigs like his mother had asked. But as soon as she disappeared to help a customer, Peeta took the 2 loaves of bread and threw them to Katniss. This act of kindness, something that's rare in the districts, ended up saving both Katniss and her family's lives, and it's a perfect representation of who Peeta is as a person. He's selfless. For the 74th Hunger Games, Peeta was the male tribute chosen alongside his crush, Katniss Everdeen. Peeta said goodbye to his family before leaving, and as he did so, he cried a lot. His mother was no comfort, as she said that District 12 might finally have a winner, but she was not referring to her son, but rather to Katniss. As he and Katniss made their way to the train station and were swarmed by reporters, Peeta's face bared visible traces of tears, something that Katniss thought made him look weak. While on the train, Peeta and Katniss had to help a drunk Haymitch who was supposed to be their mentor, but instead, Peeta was left to give him a bath after he slipped and fell in his own vomit. Later on, Peeta got mad at Haymitch for not giving them legitimate help. In his frustration, he knocked Haymitch's glass out of his hand, which Haymitch responded to by punching Peeta in the jaw. Haymitch then made a deal with the two of them, saying that he would help them as long as they did not interfere with his drinking. When they arrived in the Capitol, Peeta waved to the crowd, and when Katniss gave him a look, Peeta shrugged and said that some of them might be rich, something that made Katniss believe that Peeta had been forming a strategy to stay alive and made her not trust him. Peeta's stylist was named Portia, and she worked alongside Cinna, and together they made the best costumes out of all of the districts that year. Peeta ensured that District 12 got even more attention when he suggested that he and Katniss hold hands. After the parade, Peeta told Katniss that she looked great with the flames, and Katniss kissed him on the cheek, though she was just playing games the way she thought Peeta was as well. Katniss thought that Peeta being kind was part of his strategy, but in reality, Peeta was just a genuinely nice person, and nothing he did was calculated, it was just who he was. After dinner, Peeta asked to talk to Katniss in private, and suggested that they go up to the roof where there was a lot of wind, meaning they could not be recorded. Peeta then asked Katniss if she and Gale were relatives, and when she said no, he asked if he had said goodbye to her before leaving, and she said yes and told a surprised Peeta that his father did too. Peeta told Katniss that it made sense because his father had known Katniss's mother and always liked Katniss and her younger sister Prim. Peeta and Katniss decided to train together rather than separately, and Peeta hyped Katniss up to Haymitch, saying that she was amazing with a bow and arrow, and Katniss responded saying that Peeta was very strong from lifting flour all day. When the two went to the training facility, Peeta enjoyed the camouflage station, and he realized that he was really good at it thanks to his cake decorating skills from the bakery. While back on the District 12 floor, Peeta tried to joke around with Katniss, but Katniss responded saying that they should not pretend to be friends when no one was around, something that hurt Peeta, but he warily agreed. For the Game Maker's assessments, Peeta felt that the Game Makers took little interest in him, so he just threw some heavy things until they told him he could leave. But to his shock, he ended up being scored an 8, which was higher than most other tributes. After training alongside Katniss, his longtime crush, he realized he was getting too close to her, and seeing an opportunity to enhance both his and Katniss's likability, Peeta asked Haymitch to be trained separately from Katniss, as he had a plan. When the time came for the tributes interviews with Caesar Flickerman, Peeta was a natural, making the audience laugh and making everyone like him. When asked if he had a girlfriend back home, Peeta revealed his love for Katniss. Afterwards, a furious Katniss shoved Peeta into an urn, which shattered and cut Peeta's hands, which became covered in blood. After Haymitch cut in and said that he actually did her a favor by making her desirable, Katniss apologized to Peeta. Peeta's decision to cast them in the light as the star-crossed lovers was an act of defiance. It earned the sympathy of the audience, who could now relate to them and see them as more than just violent entertainment. And now, because the audience cares for Katniss and Peeta, their deaths could upset the audience rather than entertain them. However, deep down for Peeta, this was not an act. These were his true feelings for Katniss. The night before the games, Peeta went up to the roof and was later joined by Katniss. Peeta told her how he didn't want to become one of the Capitol's pawns. He wanted to maintain his identity, even if it meant death.
You know, if I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
This, however, only irritated Katniss, who snapped at him and walked away. When they entered the arena and were waiting for the games to start, Peeta noticed that Katniss had her eye on the cornucopia, and because Haymitch had told them both not to go for it, Peeta shook his head at her, but she did not listen. In the arena, Peeta quickly befriended the career tributes and began to roll with them, though they were just using him, hoping that he'd lead them to Katniss. After the group killed a girl, they became worried that they hadn't killed her all the way, so Peeta went back to make sure she was fully dead. Peeta and the careers eventually tracked Katniss down and forced her to stay up in a tree, but Katniss one-upped them by dropping a trackerjacker nest on them. After Katniss got down from the tree, Peeta ran up to her, urging her to run before Cato could get to her. This act showed that Peeta's loyalty to Katniss defied the setup of the games, and it also suggested that his professed love for Katniss was real and not just a ploy. And Katniss's final thought before passing out was that Peeta Mellark saved her life. Peeta had to flee from the careers after helping Katniss, but not before Cato got to him, stabbing and slicing his leg open. Peeta kept a low profile with his injured leg, not able to do all that much. He used his camouflage skills and hid near a body of water, but he was not doing well. He had wounds all over from trackerjacker stings, he had a fever, and most of all, his leg was badly infected from Cato when he had cut him. It was so deep that it went straight to the bone. It was soon announced that two tributes from the same district could win if they were the last two survivors, meaning both himself and Katniss could come out of this alive. Eventually, he was found by Katniss, and he asked in a hoarse voice if she was there to finish him off. Katniss showed him that she was not, and she tried to move him, but he was too hurt to go far, so they made their way to a cave. Peeta thanked Katniss, but talking used too much energy, so to hush him up, Katniss leaned in and kissed Peeta, and after that, he finally dozed off. Going forward, Katniss continued to kiss Peeta, snuggled with him, and sold the lovers aspect, knowing that it was the only way to get sponsors. But Peeta, who really did love Katniss, did not know this was all an act. Peeta got worse and worse. His fever went up, and he got blood poisoning on his leg, which would likely kill him if it wasn't treated soon. Katniss urged him to stay alive until they won and could get him help. Then, when it was announced that there was a feast at the cornucopia and there was something there that each tribute desperately needed, Katniss wanted to go, thinking it was medicine for Peeta, but Peeta forbid her to go, saying that he would follow her and shout the whole way. Katniss decided to give him sleep syrup and his berries, but when Peeta discovered what was in it, he attempted to vomit, but it didn't work. He soon became unconscious, and Katniss went to the cornucopia to get his medicine, but in the process, she got her forehead sliced. Katniss applied the medicine to his leg, but then fell unconscious due to her wound. Peeta woke up feeling great thanks to the medicine, and he began to take care of Katniss and her wound, reversing the roles. Eventually, the moment when Peeta gave Katniss the bread back in District 12 came up, and when Katniss asked why he did it, Peeta replied saying that she knew why. Katniss began to play her part well, saying that she didn't know what she would do without Peeta, and then kissed him. Later on, she asked when Peeta first started liking her, and Peeta talked about their first day of school and how he had fallen for her after hearing her singing voice. Hearing this made Katniss realize that Peeta might not be pretending to love her the way she was, but she played along, giving him another kiss. Selling the star-crossed lovers helped them immensely, as they were given an entire feast from a sponsor. Peeta was so happy that he and Katniss were clicking, though Peeta still did not understand that Katniss was just acting. He was a poor naive boy who thought the love of his life really loved him back, but it was all an act. When the two left the cave to go hunting, they had to split up because Peeta's footsteps were too loud and scared the game away. Peeta instead went to collect food, and he found some berries that Katniss told him were poisonous. This was proven to be true when another tribute died while eating them. With only Cato left, Peeta and Katniss tried to drive him out, but when they finally saw him, he was being chased by mutts made by the Capitol, and Peeta and Katniss joined him, all three of them running for their lives. Peeta struggled to run with his hurt leg and told Katniss to go on without him, but Katniss went back and helped him get on top of the cornucopia. While up there, Cato put Peeta in a headlock, and he told Katniss that if she shoots him, both he and Peeta would die when they fell into the herd of mutts below. Peeta, however, raised his arm and drew an X across Cato's hand, making a target for Katniss. Katniss shot his hand just as Peeta shoved him backwards, and Katniss grabbed Peeta before he fell down with Cato. After Katniss put Cato out of his misery, Peeta and Katniss thought that they had won, but an announcement rang out saying that there could only be one winner. Peeta quickly reached for his knife about to kill himself so that Katniss could win, but Katniss saw what he was doing and shot it out of his hand with an arrow. When Peeta said that there was no other way, Katniss pulled out the poisonous berry so that they could die together. Before they ate it, however, another frantic announcement came, telling them to stop and saying that they were both winners of the 74th Hunger Games. When picked up by the hovercraft, Peeta was immediately taken away from Katniss to tend to his wounds. Ultimately, they had to cut his leg off and give him a fake one because the injury was too bad, and for the rest of his life, Peeta would have a prosthetic leg. In the future, this leg would give him a lot of trouble and a lot of getting used to. After the games, there was a conversation between Katniss and Haymitch that Peeta was not a part of, but this conversation is vital to his character arc, so I'm going to add it in this video. Haymitch told Katniss that the Capitol was very angry that she had made them the laughingstock of Panem with her berry stunt to outwit them and force them to change the rules of the game. Because of this, both she and Peeta were in grave danger unless they could convince the country that they were madly in love. Haymitch finished the conversation saying that he did not have to give Peeta the same memo because Peeta was already truly in love with Katniss. In the after-game ceremony, Katniss ran on stage to hug and kiss Peeta until Haymitch made them stop. Katniss cuddled up with Peeta throughout the whole thing, and the two were crowned by President Snow. Katniss continued the charade with Peeta through the victory banquet and the interview, smiling and laughing, which made Peeta feel amazing. During the interview, she let Peeta do most of the talking, but she interjected saying that she could not bear the thought of being without Peeta, and that was why she tried to eat the berries. On the train back to District 12, Katniss and Peeta got off when they stopped for fuel hand in hand, and Peeta gave her a bunch of flowers, but unknown to Peeta, the flowers reminded her of Gale, who was the boy back home who everyone in the district thought Katniss was with. Peeta then asked her what was bothering her, but she responded saying nothing. Haymitch then came up to them and said that they were doing a great job and to keep it up. Peeta asked Katniss what he meant, and he became extremely upset to discover that Katniss's feelings for him had all been an act, part of a survival strategy. After finding this out, Peeta began to distance himself from Katniss, but when they arrived in District 12, Peeta extended his hand, adding that it was just for the cameras. While back in District 12, Peeta along with Katniss moved into Victor's village, which had huge mansions, and each got their own home next to Haymitch. At this point, the three had sort of become a weird family. Katniss the father, who went out and hunted to get money. Peeta the stay-at-home mother, who took care of the house, cooked food, and took care of Haymitch, who took on the role of the child. Every time Peeta was around Katniss, he was very stiff and awkward. He himself wanted to be with Katniss, but that wasn't what she wanted. Each victor needed a talent that they would become known for, and Peeta's talent was painting. He made many paintings depicting the Hunger Games, many of them featuring Katniss. When it came time for the victory tour, Peeta waited for Katniss at the train station with many cameras on him, and when she arrived, she kissed him for the first time in months. Peeta was nervous and sad about this because he knew Katniss would never feel the same way about him, but he played along, smiling for the camera. While on the train during the victory tour, Peeta told Katniss that he needed to talk to her about Gale. He admitted that he'd had a crush on Katniss for a long time, but that he knew she had something with Gale. He then apologized to her for trying to hold her to the things she had said in the arena, recognizing that her fake feelings were ultimately the thing that saved them both. Katniss was touched by Peeta's apology, and together they agreed to just be friends. Peeta held Katniss's hand, and Katniss was happy to know that he was touching her out of friendship, not romance. Peeta then showed Katniss his paintings of her, which had an entire train car to themselves. When they got to the compartment, Katniss said that he was a brilliant artist, but she admitted that she hated the paintings because it reminded her of the most painful days of her life. Peeta told her that he needed to paint the games because he saw them every night in his nightmares. When the time came for their speeches in District 11, Peeta, seeing that Katniss was unable to talk about Rue's death, he stepped forward and did it for her. He then went on to say that the families of the fallen tributes would get 1 month's worth of their winnings every year until he and Katniss died. Katniss was so impressed by this that when she kissed Peeta at the end of the ceremony, the kiss wasn't forced at all. After Katniss gave one more speech, it led to an old man's death, which shook Peeta to his core. When Effie asked what happened, Peeta lied to calm her down, saying that an old truck backfired, but after hearing 2 more gunshots, it was clear that wasn't true. Haymitch took Peeta and Katniss aside and asked what was going on. Katniss explained that Snow would come to visit her and told her to sell her relationship with Peeta or her friends and family would die. She then told them about how she and Gale had kissed and that Snow knew about it, and hearing this hurt Peeta deeply. Peeta then got angry that she didn't tell him this because now his generosity out there might have led to 3 gunshots that took 3 people's lives, and he explained that he had family to protect too. Peeta then got angry at Haymitch, saying that he helped Katniss in the Hunger Games, but did not help him until the 2 were together. Haymitch apologized and promised to keep Peeta informed and involved from then on. After Peeta stormed off, Haymitch told Katniss that he always preferred Peeta over her, but when he noticed that Peeta was protecting Katniss in the games, he realized that he could do more good by sending supplies to Katniss. Later on, Peeta apologized to Katniss and said he understood why he hid all of that from her. They completed the rest of the tour doing as they were told, making polite speeches, smiling willingly for the cameras, and pretending to be in love. While traveling on the train, Peeta slept in bed with Katniss because it calmed her down and helped her sleep, and this fact became the subject of much gossip among the entourage of the District 12 team. When they made it to the capital, Katniss proposed the idea that she and Peeta get married, and Peeta agreed immediately, but then left the room. Katniss didn't understand why at first, but later Haymitch explained it to her, saying that Peeta had wanted to marry Katniss, but not for the sake of publicity. Despite this, they moved ahead with their plan, and Peeta proposed to Katniss during their interview with Caesar Flickerman, making the audience and the Capitol almost hysterical with happiness. While at the banquet, Peeta and Katniss danced together, and while dancing, Peeta confessed that he could not stop thinking about the death and the pain he encountered during the games. The 2 then admitted to each other that they may have been wrong to pacify the people of the districts. On the train back to District 12, Peeta had a bad nightmare, and as always, he decided to get into bed with Katniss. When she woke up, he told her that he felt safe being next to her while sleeping because most of his dreams were about losing her. This was something that made Katniss uncomfortable, and she did not know how to respond. A few days after they arrived in District 12, Katniss sought Peeta out, and she told him her plan to leave the district, and she was surprised to find that Peeta was willing to leave so easily. But the 2 were then interrupted by a noise in the courtyard where they found Gale being whipped. Peeta helped in putting a stop to the whipping, and he helped the others take Gale to Katniss's house. The following morning, Peeta went to Katniss's house to find that she had slept next to the unconscious Gale all night, and a very sad Peeta woke her up. Katniss then apologized for suggesting to Peeta that they run away, but Peeta cut her off a little angrily, saying that there was nothing to apologize for. A little while later, Katniss brought Peeta and Haymitch together and told them that she wanted to start an uprising, but after seeing the changes made to 12, new peacekeepers, the Hob being burned down, and terrified citizens, they realized that there was no chance of this. While the district was on lockdown thanks to the new peacekeepers, Peeta visited Katniss often to help her assemble a family book, and Peeta helped her draw plants that were useful for making medicines, and Katniss said that she enjoyed watching Peeta's face and hands as he worked. For the 75th Hunger Games, or the 3rd Quarter Quell, Snow decided that the tributes would be chosen from the existing pool of victors, meaning that either Peeta or Haymitch were going back in the arena with Katniss. Immediately, Peeta went to Haymitch and told him that he wanted to go into the arena so that he could protect Katniss in there, while Haymitch could protect her outside the arena. Either way, Peeta needed to make sure that Katniss was safe and well protected. Another example of how selfless he is, not even caring about his own life. What Peeta did not know was that Katniss went to Haymitch too, and Katniss and Haymitch came to the agreement that Peeta would go in the arena and Haymitch would send supplies to him, not Katniss, basically saving Peeta's life and Katniss giving up her own. So both Katniss and Peeta went to Haymitch, trying to ensure that the other would survive. The following morning, Peeta poured out all of Haymitch's alcohol and made arrangements with the district merchants to keep him from buying any more. When he and Haymitch met Katniss at her house, he reasoned that the 3 of them were a team, so all of them needed to stay sharp. Over the next few days, the three of them prepared for the Hunger Games, watching old footage of the victors, Haymitch telling them everything he knew about them, such as personality or their weaknesses, and the three of them exercised every morning and afternoon. When the time came for the reaping, Haymitch was chosen and Peeta volunteered in his place. He and Katniss were then taken by the guards without being able to say goodbye to their friends and family. Once they arrived in the capital, Peeta and Katniss were once again dressed in fiery costumes for the opening ceremonies, where they were instructed by their stylist to look stoic and unforgiving. They were once again forced to be the star-crossed lovers of District 12, and the crowd ate it up. Haymitch told them to befriend other tributes, as they were all victors and had known each other for years, and therefore would target the two people they did not know. However, both Peeta and Katniss decided that they didn't want to ally with anyone except each other. When Peeta went to the Game Maker's assessment, he painted a picture of Rue, depicting the moment when Katniss had dressed her in flowers after she died in the last games. As payback, the Game Makers rated Peeta a 12, basically putting a target on his back because everybody would think that he was the most dangerous with a score that high. In his interview, Peeta revealed that he and Katniss had already married, and just as the interview was about to end, he told the crowd that he and Katniss were expecting a child, an absolutely brilliant move that turned the capital citizens against Snow and the games. Peeta then walked to Katniss, tears in his eyes, and it was quite possible that they were real tears, thinking that he was about to lose Katniss forever. That night, the two slept in the same bed, not wanting to be apart, but the next day, they separated before going into the arena. When the game started, they teamed up with Finnick and Mags as Haymitch had gone behind their back to ally with them. As they walked through the jungle, Peeta hit a force field with his knife and was shot back, his heartbeat gone for a second, but Finnick stepped in and saved his life. He woke up to Katniss laughing and crying with joy, something that meant a lot to Peeta as it showed that Katniss really did care for him, and this time she wasn't pretending. Being weakened by the force field incident and having a prosthetic leg, Peeta struggled to run from poisonous fog that caused severe blistering and paralysis. Mags gave her life so that Finnick could help Peeta get to safety, and they escaped from the fog. The three of them were then chased by monkey mutations, and right before Peeta was about to be killed by one of the morphlings from District 6 jumped in front of him to save his life, as she was part of a larger plot that neither Peeta or Katniss knew about. After the monkeys retreated, Peeta stayed by the morphling's side, telling her about the beautiful sky to soothe her into death. Eventually, they ran into Joanna, Beetee, and Wyrus, and they teamed up, now having 6 people to their alliance. One night, Peeta and Katniss were awake together, and they both realized that Haymitch had agreed to keep the other alive, playing them both. Peeta then said that he would have no reason to go on living if Katniss died, and Katniss could tell that Peeta was being sincere and not just acting for the cameras. Overcome by his kindness and sensitivity, Katniss kissed him, and this too was real and not an act for the cameras. Though she had kissed him many times before, this was the first time she had ever done it out of genuine love. The team went on to form a plan, and the plan involved Peeta being separated from Katniss, something that made the two of them uneasy. The two kissed and they went their separate ways. Little did they know, this was the last time they'd see each other in a long time. Katniss used an arrow to blow the arena up, and she, Finnick, and Beetee were taken by a District 13 ship, while Peeta, Joanna, and Enoberia were taken by the capital. While in the capital, Peeta was given a cell where he was locked up. They began to torture and brainwash him, and part of his brainwashing was to make him say what they wanted during interviews. While talking with Caesar Flickerman, live to all of Panem, he said that his intent from the start of the 75th Hunger Games was to save Katniss, and that neither he nor Katniss knew of the rebels' plan to free Katniss from the arena. He then called for a ceasefire between the rebels and the capital, as more war could result in the annihilation of the country. After this, he was taken back to his prison cell. While in his cell, he heard Joanna's screams as she was tortured in the cell next to him, and vice versa, Joanna hearing Peeta's screams as he was tortured. As time passed, Peeta was much skinnier, he looked gaunt and tired looking, and he was exhausted and defeated after so much pain and agony. It was clear that their brainwashing and torturing was taking a toll on him, but the Capitol continued to do it, knowing this was the only way they could control him during interviews. When they aired another interview between Peeta and Flickerman, they tried to cover this up and make him look healthy, but it didn't work. In this interview, he was asked what he thought of Katniss rebelling and fighting back in District 8, and he said that the rebels were using Katniss and that she did not know what she was doing. When Flickerman asked if he wanted to say anything to Katniss, he looked at the camera and asked Katniss if she really trusted the people she was working with and encouraged her to use her influence to stop the war rather than encourage it. A little while later, the Capitol arranged an interview between President Snow and Peeta, where Peeta again asked for a ceasefire, but the broadcast was cut short by the rebels showing Katniss rebelling. Seeing Katniss made his mind fight through the brainwashing, and when it switched back to him and Snow, he was again asked if he wanted to say something to Katniss. Peeta's face was contorting with pain, every word clearly hurting him as he fought through the brainwashing, and he screamed that all those in District 13 would be dead by morning. Snow screamed to end it, furious that Peeta had just warned the rebels of the bombing that the Capitol had planned. Peacekeepers rushed up to Peeta and hit him on the head, splattering blood all over the ground. In punishment for this, they tortured Peeta worse than ever and brainwashed him more than they ever had. They began to use Tracker Jacker venom on him, making him fear the things he loved most, and above all, that was Katniss. After this, he began to think that Katniss was his greatest enemy, that she was dangerous to him, and they basically got rid of all happy memories or good thoughts he had of Katniss. Having done this, the Capitol allowed the Rebels rescue team to bring Peeta along with Joanna and Annie back to District 13, knowing that Peeta was now a severe danger to Katniss. When he did come face to face with her, he viciously attacked her, grabbing hold of her neck and not letting go. Boggs saved Katniss's life, knocking Peeta out perhaps seconds before he killed her. The rebels came up with a plan for Peeta to talk with an old childhood friend from District 12 named Deli. She greeted him warmly, and for a time they talked with each other pleasantly, reminiscing about old times. But suddenly, Peeta shouted that District 12 burned because of Katniss, which made Deli cry as she tried to explain that it wasn't Katniss's fault. But Peeta continued to yell, saying that Katniss was a dangerous woman and a stinking mutt. They kept Peeta separated from everyone else, and a select few worked on his recovery. Very slowly, he was being trained to fight the Capitol's conditioning. Whenever Katniss was brought up, they began giving him calming drugs like morphling, and this had some mixed success. It made Peeta extremely confused, but it also made his fear of Katniss go down. Over time, Peeta made great strides forward in his recovery, especially when they began exposing him to footage of Katniss singing, which when he watched this, he showed no signs of anger or fear. This is interesting because Katniss singing on the first day of school was what made Peeta like Katniss. So for them to show Peeta Katniss singing, it was kind of genius, and looking at the writing, it was sort of poetic. Katniss eventually felt ready to come face to face with Peeta while he was tied down. Peeta greeted Katniss and he had an edge in his voice. He then told Katniss that he'd been conditioned to fear things he loved, and he said that based on the way he reacted to Katniss, he must have really loved her in his past. He then asked Katniss if he ever loved him, and when she didn't answer, he angrily asked if she ever loved Gale. She once again didn't respond, and very flustered, she walked out of the room, leaving Peeta there confused and angry. Despite this, Peeta's recovery moved forward even more, and this was in large part thanks to Deli, whose kindness and positivity was great during his fight against the Capitol's conditioning. He was so good, in fact, that he was allowed to have dinner with his friends, Finnick, Gale, Katniss, Joanna, and Deli, but he was still required to have guards with him. His friends immediately noticed how much more peaceful and gentler he was, but he still had an edge in his voice. During dinner, Peeta asked if Katniss and Gale were still a couple, and as he said this, his hand was shaking. Joanna distracted him, however, by joking and calling Peeta an evil mutt, a sort of inside joke the two could share after being locked up next to each other while in the Capitol. This comment, however, made Katniss and Gale leave the table. After they left, Peeta began yelling at himself as if he were two different people, which he basically was. The old Peeta who loved Katniss, and the conditioned Peeta who had been tortured by the government to hate Katniss. Peeta stayed behind in District 13 while many of his friends went on a mission to the Capitol, but Coin, the president of 13, went to visit Peeta and told him that he was joining them in action, though he was clearly not ready for this. When he arrived, the leader Boggs was furious, and he ordered his soldiers to watch Peeta around the clock in case he showed any signs of aggression towards Katniss or any other rebels. The following night, Peeta saw Katniss on watch duty and he approached her. He told Katniss that he did not know who to trust anymore, and Finnick cut in saying that he was among friends here. He then said that Peeta saved many lives in District 13 by giving them the warning of the bombing, as it allowed them to get everyone to safety. During their mission, Peeta played a game called Real or Not Real with one of the rebel soldiers named Jackson. In this game, Peeta named something he remembered, and Jackson told him if it was something real or if it was something planted in his mind by the Capitol. This helped Peeta a great deal, but when the group set off a bomb, the noise and confusion re-triggered Peeta's Capitol conditioning. He ran at Katniss and attacked her. As soldiers tried to restrain him, he pushed one of them into a nearby explosive pod, killing them instantly. Eventually, the remaining soldiers succeeded in knocking him out. The team dragged an unconscious Peeta as they made their way to safety, and right when Peeta woke up, Katniss asked what the plan was, and to everyone's shock, Peeta responded saying that the next move was to kill him. He said he was a danger to Katniss, had already killed one of their own, and he said that he should be taken care of. Katniss shut him down, however, saying that he was too important to their mission of finding Snow to die. As time went on, Peeta continued to suggest that he should be killed, but he was shut down, though Katniss did think about it. However, she ended up rethinking this when she saw a flash of the old Peeta and his positivity. As they traveled through a tunnel, Peeta began having trouble because of his conditioning again. Katniss stepped up to help him, and Peeta said to Katniss real or not real that she was protecting him, and she told him real. Just then, they heard Mutz whispering Katniss's name, and Katniss thought this would trigger Peeta, but to her surprise, he wasn't hostile at all. Instead, he urged Katniss to leave the tunnels as soon as possible. When they were attacked by the Mutts, Peeta was actually the calmest and most self-controlled out of all of them as he helped everyone get to safety. Katniss was forced to kill Finnick to take him out of his misery, and overcome with fear and anxiety, she kissed Peeta, and Peeta kissed her back and whispered that he wasn't going to let Snow kill her. Once they got to safety, Peeta asked Katniss if it was real or not real that she risked her life to get him medicine in the 74th Hunger Games, and she told him it was real, so happy that Peeta was remembering their old relationship. Later on, Peeta had a conversation with Gale, and he insisted that Katniss loved Gale. Gale pointed out that they had bigger problems to worry about than who Katniss would choose, and Peeta voiced his curiosity on how she would make up her mind. Gale ended the conversation saying that she would pick whomever she thought she couldn't survive without. As they made their way to Snow's mansion, Peeta and the rest of the team were separated from Katniss and Gale, as all around them, guns fired as the rebels and peacekeepers fought it out. Peeta watched from afar as 2 explosions went off outside of Snow's mansion, killing many children and healers, including Katniss's little sister Prim, and this finished the war off once and for all. The rebels had won. Once everything calmed down, Peeta and the other remaining Hunger Games survivors were brought to a meeting where Coin put it to a vote if they should have one more Hunger Games with the Capitol's children. Peeta spoke up angrily and opposed this idea, calling it cruel, but despite this, the vote went in favor of doing it. Peeta was there for President Snow's execution, but he watched as Katniss shot Coin instead. When he saw that Katniss was about to take a nightlock pill to kill herself, Peeta grabbed her hand to stop her and told her that he couldn't let her go. He had saved Katniss's life, but he wasn't sure what was in store for her punishment. He was afraid that he would never see Katniss again. However, he later found out that she was taken to Victor's village in what remained of District 12, and a delighted Peeta joined her there. The government had said that they wanted nothing to do with him anymore, giving him the perfect excuse to meet up with Katniss. The two were ecstatic to see each other, and Peeta brought news of Gale's fancy job in District 2, officially ending the love triangle between the 3 of them, because with Gale gone, Peeta was the only person that Katniss wanted to be with. Even if Gale was there though, Katniss still would have chosen Peeta. She realized that she did not love Gale, because deep down, he had nothing but hatred, while Peeta had everything that she needed in a partner, pure gentleness and goodness. One day, Peeta asked Katniss if it was real or not real that she loved him, and she replied saying, real. Because they were so alone and had finally found peace, they learned to keep busy together. As Katniss hunted, Peeta pursued his love of baking. Together, they helped cure one another of their nightmares and traumas. For Peeta, he never lost his grip on reality again, and he conquered the flashbacks to his days in the Capitol when he was being tortured, and Peeta helped Katniss get over the sight of her little sister Prim dying right in front of her, as well as her days in the arena. It took 15 years to convince Katniss, but Katniss and Peeta eventually went on to have 2 kids together, 1 boy and 1 girl. The boy had Peeta's blonde hair and Katniss's gray eyes, and their daughter had Katniss's dark hair and Peeta's blue eyes. Peeta became an incredible partner to Katniss and an incredible father. Luckily, Peeta was one of the few characters in the Hunger Games that got a happy ending. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can follow me on social media to see more of my personal life and more of this little dude. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe. I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons listed below. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a bunch of other rewards, become a patron today. Again, thank you so much for watching, and look out for more great Movie Flame videos on the way.